Jackson Radio Show.
All right, everybody, welcome back. Kevin Jackson here. So there's a big brouhaha with Steve Bannon and President Trump. And here's what I want to say about this, because one of my buddies, and in fact, he's one of the producers of the radio show, a guy named Keith. Keith says to me, Kevin, I can't wait to get your take. Keith knows he said this. I can't wait to get your take on the Bannon-Trump controversy. And here's what you got to understand about Keith. Number one, Keith is an amazing guy. He really is. Great family man. And I don't know how in the world Keith ends up being a leftist and working for me. But we're buddies. And so, you know, we have these open, honest discussions. And in fact, I've gone on Keith's show and we've had these discussions, and it's been riveting radio. But anyway, in his capacity with me, Keith says, Kevin, you know, what's your take on it? And he sends me a note. He says, I think Jared Kushner is going to be hung out to dry, whatever. He's got all these different theories, and it's all based on this leftist ideology. Now, Keith lives in Massachusetts. He's one of our extended producers. And so you have to almost forgive him there, because there's a certain amount of groupthink that occurs in Massachusetts that there's just no way around. But there are glimmers of sanity. Now, keep in mind, as I said, great guy, great husband, great father, great son, does just a crazy amount of stuff to help his mom and his family. He's a family guy. There's no reason for Keith to be a leftist. He thinks he's a leftist, but he's not. And so he buys into the nonsense of the left. And look, I get it. He's in the heart of leftism. Next to California, there's no worse place to be, in terms of infected with leftism than Massachusetts. But I'll tell you this, Keith is forced to listen to this show every single day, and some of it has to infuse. Now, it's tough to break down those barriers, because it's not like we're having deep conversations about what I'm talking about every single day, but he has to hear the show because he has to produce the show. And so he sends me this thing saying, what do you think's going to happen? What's this thing with Bannon? So let me just explain it to everybody so everybody's clear on what Bannon is. I believe this with all my heart. Bannon played himself up well with his association with Donald Trump. How that came to be, I really don't know, outside of Andrew Breitbart, the Breitbart organization, and the fact that there are some people who market themselves amazingly so. This kid, Ben Shapiro. It's all marketing. Ben's a sharp guy, but they say he's got the #1 digital radio show. I've listened to his show. There's no reason for it to be that way, but that's not to be a slight against him. You know, Tide may not be the best detergent, but they market the heck out of themselves. So kudos to him. I watched Charlie Kirk, a young conservative, working a room once in New York, and I thought to myself, wow, if I had that kind of ability to network, I'd be a billionaire. You know, Charlie's a nice guy, but, you know, just being honest, I don't feel like he has the same panache that I have, but I don't have the panache that he has to work a room that way. That's the trade-off. We had one of my producers, Dave's retired, but he told me one time, Dave's one of the best radio producers on the planet. And he said to me one time, Kevin, if I had your drive, I'd be Rush Limbaugh. And it's true. Dave was he did enough to get by. It was just part of his nature. My nature is not to network. My nature is not to go to people and do this. So anyway, a little bit off topic, but you get what I'm saying. So Bannon's one of these guys that apparently marketed and got himself up to the level where he caught Trump's attention, and boom, he worked on the team. And when you don't know what a guy's doing, you think he's really amazing. Now, for me, having met Steve Bannon prior to his association with Trump, at least for anything I knew, I couldn't understand why he chose him. See, I talked to Steve a couple times before this all came to be, and I chronicled one time my second encounter with Steve Bannon. It was at CPAC, and I questioned his conservative creds in that instant. I was like, this guy, the interview we had was not a conservative questioning me. And so I'll talk about that more down the road. But I pegged him as a left-leaning moderate. So when President Trump chose him to be part of the campaign, I was perplexed, to be honest with you. And it made me question Trump because I said, wow, if he's choosing left-leaning moderates, he may not have the conservative creds that I had. And that was part of my reservation, at least initially. Now, like I said before, whoever made it, and I was going to support him. And that's exactly what I did. But I'm refreshed to see that President Trump is nothing like Bannon. Now, Bannon made news with what I consider sort of a career-limiting move with this statement that he just made saying that in this June 2016 meeting between Donald Jr. and some Russian lawyer, he called it treasonous and unpatriotic. Now, I don't get this. He said he was interviewing with an author of Michael Wolff, for a book that's coming out. And he says, even if you thought it was not treasonous or unpatriotic or bad, and I happen to think it's all of that, you should have called the FBI immediately. That's ridiculous. So it's going to be in fire and fury inside the Trump White House. And then he went on to say this, they're going to crack Don Jr. like an egg on national TV. That is the biggest crock of nonsense. Look, I'm telling you guys right now, you rest assured, nothing is going to happen to Trump, to Donald Trump Jr., to Jared Kushner, or any of the actual Trump people that we're talking about here. This investigation has gone as far as it has, and I don't know why Bannon would do this. I mean, is that how you sell books? But President Trump fired back at him. And it doesn't get any more scathing than Donald Trump telling Steve Bannon, you better back out of my business. And the note that he sent was just, I mean, you got to see the whole thing. We posted it over at theblacksphere.net. But essentially he says this, he's only in it for himself. And look, if Vegas holds odds on who's going to win this battle, put your money on Donald Trump. Now, the question that came to my mind was, are things not going that well at Breitbart? Because, Bannon got kicked out of GOP heaven. And Breitbart at the time was doing great. It was getting 300 million views a month and whatever else. It was considered one of the top media outlets for conservatives. It surpassed all the others. But something's happened since then. Now, Bannon's been the belle of the ball, and I know this because I was with him in New York, said a quick hello, hey, Steve, how's it going? And, he was mobbed. People are thinking, oh, Steve Bannon. I had somebody call me and say, Kevin, we'd like you to speak at an event. But, hey, could you happen to get Steve Bannon because he can headline? And I was like, I don't know Steve to that degree. The same thing happened to me, by the way, with Glenn Beck, where everybody was like, oh, Glenn Beck, he's amazing. And a guy called me and says, Kevin, listen, if you can get Glenn Beck, I'll let you MC it. But things like that don't last. Look at Glenn Beck. In a year, I'm telling you right now, Steve Bannon's going to be an outlier. But if you want my take on it, Bannon's wrong.
This is the Kevin Jackson Radio Show.